Oddbod is back and it's time for some well overdue upgrades and changes. If you're new to the channel, this is Oddbod and it was the first full build on my channel, and there's about 16 episodes or so for you to go back and you can see the entire build. It's basically a hodgepodge of different model Bertha parts, hence the title or name Oddbod. I originally bought just a frame and an engine. The frame had everything cut off it. I think someone was planning to make a chopper from it. Series 2 loop here which needed some repairs. I got from a friend in the Bristol Bertha Club, which I mounted further back than original, and it's a bit lower, causing all sorts of problems with fuel tanks and everything else pretty much. I went to Swiss Tony's and got a lot of parts, the LD mudguard, Model D headlight, the LD footboards, can't remember where the panels came from. Quite a project. I've been driving the thing for a while now and it is well overdue for a few changes, upgrades, just to make it more user friendly. Possibly encouraging me to use it a bit more now that the spring is coming. So yeah, let's get into that. This morning off to see Steve. I'm going to take Oddbod over there. Just with Steve again and in Weston-super-Mare. I seem to spend half my life in Weston-super-Mare at the moment. But we're looking at... So the issue we got with Oddbod in everyday life, not that I do thousands of miles on this thing, but to fill it up with fuel, this is a J series tank and the filler is at the front and it is just really difficult to get to. So what I've asked Steve to do is hopefully to weld on the filler back here. Of course we'll have to cap that front one off, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. Been around a while.
What? This is one of your test pieces?
Yeah, well, we all made them on the fitters course, yeah.
Did you?
Yeah.
Look at that. Handmade.
Yeah.
Like it. Right, there's the tank. We're just going to drain the fuel out of that. I don't think there's too much in there, actually.
Smell a comp too, can't you?
So I'm thinking we might try and reuse this filler just for the top so we can stick a standard cap back on. But first of all, I need to drill out. Glad to see someone's got some sharper hole saws than me. So we're just making a little block off the plate. Pretty good, isn't it? I mean, it's close enough, isn't it? To weld it on. Chuck the fuel tank back in the scooter and we're just marking where it's going to go. So I left the tank with Steve to weld up and here it is back. So as you can see, this was the old filler neck and that's been capped over, and here's the new filler. And yeah, he does just such an amazing job. It's all TIG welded as opposed to I've only got a MIG welder, and you saw a mess I made of that air tank from a few episodes ago. This, yeah, looks really good. So I'm going to throw some paint on this before we move on to the next thing on Oddbod, and then a bit later in the episode we can throw this back in once the paint is dry. While the paint on the fuel tank is drying and before I install that back in the scoot, I just want to talk to you about issue number 2 I have with Oddbod. And as every Bertha or vintage scooter owner knows, every time you go out on the road, you need to fill up, etc., you need to have some 2-stroke oil with you, and I have just nowhere on Oddbod to carry that. And the other thing is, I mean, we always take a few tools with us, don't we? Could be like an adjustable spanner, screwdriver, definitely a spark plug spanner. What I've found's happened in the past, I've tried to stuff those tools into my jacket pockets or even my rucksack, etc. And it's just a faff, you know, thinking about that every time you go out. What I'd like to do is have some kind of storage on the scooter. I mean, obviously, original Lambretta would have the toolbox there. I've not got any of that, and that's partly because I've lowered this loop, and also now the fuel tank takes up that space. So I've got no toolbox there. I've got obviously no legshield toolbox or anything like that. So what I'm thinking of doing, and these are an aftermarket thing that you can buy, is fitting one of these tray things, and they fit basically around that kind of area, and the panel goes over the top and you never know it's there. But the issue I've got here, these are designed to bolt here onto the footboard supports, and they should just like bolt on with not too much effort on a standard Lambretta. Well, I haven't got any of those brackets. I'm going to have to make some brackets before I can mount this on. Yeah, normally these fittings I think would fit into the support that comes down here for the footboards. They give you this bracket. Not quite sure how this all works, but I've obviously got nothing there to fix it to. I'm thinking that I'm going to have to probably weld a bracket off of here somehow to come down and pick that up, and then at the back end weld a bracket off of this down here. Try not to over engineer this, but just a right angle bracket, and then can drill a couple of holes in there. Apparently people have had problems with it hitting the hub, I guess, so I need to, yeah, I guess it would hit there. So you want to keep it up, I guess, quite high. And the other thing is you need it easily removable, because I'm guessing that if you need to change this back wheel, you're going to have to pull this off as well. The kit did also come with this bracket as well. I've no idea how that goes, but I might be able to use that here and put an angle in it and use that to drop down. I decided to enlarge all the holes to accept an M8 bolt, which has a 13mm head or nut, and that is the same size as the wheel nuts, so one spanner would allow me to take off that toolbox tray and to remove the wheels. I'm just trying to cut down on the amount of spanners I have to carry around. And here I'm just removing the surface finish, ready to be able to weld to that bracket. Fitting it up to the toolbox tray. I need to make a bit more room, so I'm just removing the electrics here. There you can see the riv nuts which are used to fix the electrics to the frame. Just offering up the toolbox tray and just checking it's roughly level. And here I am using CAD, cardboard aided design. And I've decided to extend the bracket that came with the toolbox tray, because I didn't quite have enough metal to make a one-piece bracket. And anyway, the piece that came with the tray was pretty good and obviously fits the profile well. And I like to cut out things or do my grinding close to the floor, and that's really just because it creates so much dust. If you do it up on the bench, it just fills the whole garage with dust. I find if I can grind close to the floor, it keeps the dust down to ground level. Just tacking this extension piece into place, using some clamps just to hold it down. What I've learned from welding over the last couple of years is you put that kind of heat into the metal and it'll just warp that metal, even on quite chunky stuff like that. And then just removing the paint from the frame, so I've got somewhere to get a nice weld to. Right, you saw me just extend this bracket out, which is going to come across to the frame. First of all, I levelled up the scooter a bit here, so it's level that way, just so when we come to doing this box we can get that roughly about right. And it's been quite a lot of fettling to get this bracket about right. Ground away the paint from the frame here, just got that clamped roughly in place. I've been using my pitch gauge. Now obviously when I sat on this scooter the back end's going to go down, but you want this to look right when you're sort of parked up really and you lift up the loop. You don't want that to be at a funky angle, and I've kind of tried to set this to roughly level. It's 0.5 of a degree out the right way, if you know what I mean. So like I say, when I sit down on that, that's going to go down anyway. And I've been checking the angle that way as well, and it does lean up slightly, or 1.9 degrees. But again, what I'm thinking is when I put some weight in this, it's gonna tend to push down, and obviously you don't want it pushing into the wheel or any sort of chance of that kind of thing happening. So I'm kind of happy with it sat out a little bit. I've also got some adjustment obviously with this bracket is here as well, so if I find there's an issue I can just tilt the thing out quite a bit with these two bolts here. And obviously I want to get this tacked in place at least, and then I can start thinking about this bracket at the rear. But pretty happy with that. You can see I've even got a jack stand there as well, just holding up the back. Got this bracket welded on, big old chunky weld down there, and then big welds all the way up there. That's not going anywhere. Feels pretty solid already. But I'm just going to move to this back bracket now, and I was originally thinking of welding something on there. I might actually bolt something there. It's just obviously you've got to remove a load of paint, and then the weld's going to melt the rubber, etc, etc. So yeah, I might just bend up something and I can bolt it through there, and then a couple of bolts there. And that is the little angle bracket. I mean, that is not bad for eyeballing that. It's pretty much 90 degrees. It might need to come this way slightly. It's obviously a weird angle, twisted angle, and then I just recessed the rubber here, put a couple of fixings in there. Got one hole at the bottom here, so I'm going to offer up the box, and then we can mark on the back where that hole is. And then I'll do, I think, one more fixing at the top, so it's got two bolts on there, and we'll see how rigid that is. I was thinking about possibly doing like a little bracket across there just to triangulate that, but that feels pretty darn solid. And of course it can't go anywhere because that mudguard's there as well. So here's that bracket which is going to go under there. I know it kind of looks a weird shape, but there's a couple of weird angles going on. And I welded these bolts to there, so you don't have to get your hands behind there obviously to take the tray off. All the components kind of done now, so what I'm going to do is just have a bit of a clean up and put some paint on this bracket, put some paint on here. To be honest, I think I'm going to paint this tray. Oh, by the way, this is stainless steel, and I think I must have blunted 15 drill bits just trying to drill through this bracket. But funnily enough, I don't have an issue welding stainless steel. Anyway, this tray's stainless steel as well, but it's so shiny. I think it just looks kind of crazy on Oddbod there, so I think I'm going to chuck some paint on there as well. First, I just need to prepare everything and give everything a clean, so let's get on with that. Welcome to the spray booth, and there's the bracket and the tray. I don't know what you want to call that, toolbox thing. And no, that's not my dirty old washing. There is a scooter underneath that pile of stuff. Just put this here to protect the paint. Well, you know, to stop the overspray going on everything. Got all this degreased as well. So I'm going to start chucking some paint on, starting with a bit of etch primer. I left that paint to dry overnight. It was pretty cold, but that looks pretty good. And this came out really nice. I actually took this into the house last night and stuck it on top of the radiator so it properly dried. I mean, that's officially powder coating in my book. Yeah, super nice this thing, and that's the little bracket as well. I'm not going to see much of that obviously, and that's the paint. So yeah, got that off the old Amazon, and it says it's flexible non-crack paint, petrol resistant, and that was a big thing for me, petrol resistant, because yeah, that's what I painted the petrol tank with as well. So let's get the tray, including the bracket, fixed back on there, and fix this wiring back, and just have a quick look and see what that looks like. Well, that took way longer than it should have, and that was partly because one of these bolts in here snapped off. I basically over tightened it, and then I couldn't get the thing out, so that was a bit of a faff. Got a couple new bolts in there now, and that's looking pretty neat up under there. The other thing was I kind of forgot about the electrics. I thought they were going to run over the top, but there wasn't enough electrics there, and anyway, that would have looked terrible. So I had to disconnect all the electrics here. Not a massive issue, but I fed them up through there, which is nice and neat. I mean, this was all sort of slightly temporary when I built Oddbod. I was going to tidy this up a bit more, but it's kind of fine for now anyway. But that is looking pretty good. Really liking that. As we've got this far, I think next, yeah, I should throw the fuel tank back in and get all that hooked back up again, and then the whole of that is done. Fuel tank is back in. It's a tight squeeze. I'd forgotten. You have to bash it in a little bit to make it fit in there, and it's really tight in there. So it's a bit of a pain to get in. That's the capped off filler, and round here, look at this. You can see how much easier it is now to be able to go to a fuel station and get to that tap, whereas before, like I say, when I put the panels on you, it's even worse, but you were kind of trying to reach way in there. I've connected back up the fuel pipe, obviously there, kind of custom fuel tap on and off. Again, I made this on a previous episode where it's on the opposite side to standard, and I need an Allen key to switch it on and off, but I kind of like that, a bit of security. So I just whacked this panel back on just to give you more of an idea of the issue I was facing before Steve moved this filler neck, and yeah, you can see that old filler's right inside there. But this new one is actually outside the line, so you can just put a pump here, open it up nice and easy, actually see if you've got any petrol in there or not, which you couldn't do before. Now this is the important bit. What do we fill this lovely new toolbox tray thingy-majig with? And this is what I normally carry around with me. Some two-stroke oil, that's very important. I love this little Diddy bottle. I can't remember where I got that from, but that's just perfect to fit in there. WD-40, of course. This is a staple for any kind of on-the-road repairs and getting any damp in the electrics and that kind of thing. Little mixer bottle here, so you get your percentages right with the two-stroke oil. I always carry a spare spark plug as well for some reason. A spare pair of underwear, that's in case you shit yourself when you're racing a GSR 1000. Jokingly aside, this also stops your toolbox getting absolutely wrecked and stops those horrible rattling noises as well. Adjustable spanner, one of these multi-screwdriver things. Pair of pliers is always a good thing. Spark plug spanner, obviously that's very important. Got this little ratchet with a 13mm and a 10mm socket. Obviously the 13mm is good for changing the wheels if you need to. I don't carry a spare wheel, but you know, if you're riding with a friend and they've got one, it's an emergency, blah, blah, blah. Lastly, a lock if I can fit it in. But I'm just really curious to know what you guys keep in your little toolbox. I mean, this is probably, what, similar size or maybe a little bit bigger than the standard toolbox. So yeah, any tips? Where'd you get your tools from? So I'm super happy with how that all turned out, the fuel tank and the toolbox tray thingy. Looks really good, all hidden obviously under these panels. And there is one more upgrade that I want to do to Oddbod, but unfortunately I've run out of time this week, so you'll have to wait for another episode on that. And I just want to thank you all for watching. If you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button, really helps out the channel. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram. Give us a like, leave a comment. We do have merchandise for sale, I'll put links below, and we'll see you on the next one. Cheers.